All right, well, thanks for coming out again, everyone, tonight. To be February's final Thursday, two more happening. Got Don McLeese coming up from Iowa City to read at the end of March. And then Andrew Farkas, who will be coming up from Kansas actually to read at the end of April. So keep an eye out for the always happy when one of the featured readers, someone who has spent many a month at the open mic microphone, where oftentimes I find myself having to raise the microphone so that it actually will work for Seth. But Seth, since graduation, most recently he was the artist in residence at the Hartman Nature Reserve in Cedar Falls. He did a blog related to that, and really, I think, really expanded a lot of the kind of work that he was doing. Part of which led to his current chapbook, Cover Recover, that he'll be reading from tonight. And I will say, he's letting it go for like way not enough money. He should be charging more, like $5. Like that's not even a grande, latte. I mean, so really, there's no reason not to get one of these on the way out. And I can take credit cards in the back at the end of this if you're interested. Of course, check out all the other books as well, and say hi to Hannah at least so she doesn't get lonely back there. So, all right. So with that, then I will welcome to the stage Seth Thill.
Hello, I am Seth, as Jim mentioned very kindly. So I want to start out, of course, just by thanking everyone who read at the open mic. That was really, really awesome to see. Like Jim said, I was for a long time, for many months while I was in undergrad and grad school, frequent open mic reader. So it's really, really cool to kind of be on the other side and get to see all of the really cool stuff that people are doing. So thank you again for that. And of course, just right from the beginning, thanks to Jim for having me for Final Thursday. Thanks to everyone at the Hearst for all of their help getting all of this put on. So as Jim mentioned, I most recently wrote a chapbook called Cover Recover. This is a version without a cover. This is coverless recover. So I'll be reading mostly from that tonight. I'll read some older stuff that I wrote in, I think everything I have was pretty much written in grad school, I guess. And then I was going to read new stuff too, but I haven't revised anything I've written since this, I guess. So never mind. But anyway, I'm just going to start with a few poems from the chapbook. So this first one is called Loops. My bookmarking system is very complex and very elegant. Anyway, this poem is called Loops. Soft waves roll a crushed Coke can to the lake's surface. This morning, I screenshotted another obituary for a person I used to know. Everybody used to know. Soft waves roll a crushed Coke can. Tadpoles race in loops, swimming from doom. A friend texts me a new Star Wars trailer. It's a cash grab, but kids will love it, I'm sure. I remind myself how I loved The Phantom Menace. On my walk to the water, the oaks are mysteries, are mausoleums. Not quite immortality, but a branch reaching towards it, beyond the bones below. Soft waves roll a crushed Coke can. My eyes buzz over top the Hellboy omnibus. I sink my hands into mud, cling to this second body, hope I can be part of what spins. We will be bones, so let us be bones together. And so, as you might pick up from that poem, there's a lot of a lot of nature themes, I should say, to a lot of the writing. As Jim mentioned, this chapbook was written as part of my tenure at Hartman Reserve. If you've never been, it's a really, really beautiful place over kind of where Cedar Falls meets Waterloo. And I spent the summer there basically just writing poems, kind of the old like Thoreau Walden thing. I got to put on my little, I don't know, kind of, they had to have worn stupid hats, right? Like there has to be a hat that like Whitman wore all the time. That was just atrocious. I instead have this nebulous. So it's Bucks. I cannot figure out which Bucks, if it's Waterloo Bucks or Milwaukee Bucks. I found it in my parents' basement. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff about nature in this chapbook because it was written as part of that tenure as visiting artist. Like Jim mentioned, this kind of building on other stuff I had kind of worked on as a grad student, as an undergrad, just in my free time after those things too. I always wrote a lot about pop culture and kind of our relationships with pop culture and pop culture's relationship with us, and kind of how I maybe have used pop culture as a little bit of like a coping mechanism for various traumas throughout the course of my life. So then I got to think about, well, how do I use nature as a coping mechanism for the various traumas of my life? So I just kind of smashed the two together for this book because it was just kind of where I was at. And this next poem from early on in the collection is called Burrow. And I think it's really kind of about, well, it's about whatever you want it to be. It's a bunch of weird nonsense. This poem is called Burrow. On an unpaved trail, half mile, 5 minutes removed from my big screen and sectional cocoon. Fresh off a Ghibli double feature, from Totoro's forest to mid-July humidity. Like a forest sprite, I leap from tree leaf to flower petal to PlayStation joysticks, hover just over an earth or burrow inside of an earth, but never land on this earth. Forage the woods for faces you may have left there, for faces that abandoned their names. Pull creatures from Technicolor and share your life, your small minutes, your toothbrush with them, and within their home, within the clump of your brain that is shooting flares to find home. Our nights are all blackened eyes, in bushes, in leaves, in hymns, floating from dandelions. We build shelter from fallen tree branches, from falling tree branches. We tie splits in the wood together with film reel. Our insulation is mud of other worlds. I am breathing Iowa air. I am kicking for solid ground, both hands tied above my head in algae, limestone glowing in my fists, gathered from land yet cultivated. And then I'll read one more from the book here before I move back to some of the old stuff for a bit. So when I was writing this, nature poetry, as I saw it kind of going into it, was very much based in kind of observation, kind of removing the more, I don't know, this doesn't necessarily have to be what nature poetry is, but it's what I thought of it as. It's kind of trying to get out of your head as much as possible and, you know, painting the picture of the world around you, and just like Thoreau and Lake, not a person. Lakes are people too. If corporations can't be, the lakes can. Anyway, so this poem is very much in that vein, but the key difference between me and Whitman is that I am a few hundred years younger. I live somewhere out, I guess he was northeast, right? So I am not Whitman. I have a full-time job. Nobody wants to work these days, including Whitman. But that pure observational kind of writing isn't something that I don't think a lot of people can do, because, and I don't necessarily think it's the most compelling thing to do, because we have everything else going on. I have a computer in my pocket all the time, and I still need to pay my bills and all of that kind of stuff. So this is kind of where this poem comes from. It is called Small Things of Varying Significances. Hummingbirds, sweat beads, nose hair and how it traps hot stone scent. Bug bites, dead leaves, pigment spots and decade-old plasma screen. Hole in the fabric on the chest of my cheap t-shirt, sunburn around ingrown hair, phrase on edges of Spider-Man wallet, center ring of a tree, Facebook PFP of a friend's younger face, the page now dedicated to memory. Hummingbirds, sweat beads, hummingbirds, sweat beads. All right, now I'm going to move into a few poems. Again, I wanted to include a few, specifically two, from my kind of grad school days, because again, a lot of that work really informed it. My master's thesis was a hybrid memoir in verse / speculative fiction thing about specifically superhero culture, or not actual superhero culture, like not in the Avengers locker room or anything like that, but like superhero media culture and kind of its particularly like using that as a form of escapism and all that good stuff. And that really is kind of where the seeds for this project, I think, eventually kind of sprouted from. So this one is called, Yes, I've seen the new Spider-Man 3 times already, but I haven't seen it with you. And I only have 2 days left in town before I leave again, indefinitely. So we should go, please, because soon I won't be, but right now I am in the city where we go to midnight premieres of G.I. Joe or Age of Ultron or that one really bad Wolverine movie. Right now I'm in the home where we'd stand around in your kitchen after those movies, the kitchen that always smelled a bit like ammonia from what you didn't know when your dad was cooking while you were at school. The kitchen where we drink Hy-Vee brand Mountain Dew and talk shit about the overstuffed plot or bad acting or misused Deadpool. The kitchen where we realize that bitching about bad movies after the fact could somehow make the initial letdown worth the $8 ticket. So please, there's an 8:30 showing, and I've been trying to pretend that this city isn't those couple of years worth of weeknights drinking down the blood in our throats before the booze in our insides stained your carpet. And I've heard that maybe those couple of years haven't quite ended for you yet, like they've ended for me now. And I know you spent a weekend at Mercy this past February. There were needles in your brain that made you listen to whatever was telling you that you couldn't find your home here. And I'm sorry, I didn't know about that until I visited for the 4th. And I'm sorry those months between then are now strewn in plastic bags. And I'm sorry I didn't. And I'm sorry I didn't ever leave my new home to visit the old one where you are. And I'm sorry I barely texted, and I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just know that when I was in between visits to Mercy, seeing superhumans fly on a giant screen in a just too cold theater next to you with popcorn kernels stuck in my teeth got me through. I know I have to acknowledge that this home is both blockbusters with you and decay with you and maybe other things like clock towers and fish flies and limestone and river water and stained glass and spray paint and Taco Bell breakfast and Irish whiskey and whatever they are, all of these things end with you. So I'm not asking you to forgive my absence. I'm just saying I think you'll like this movie, and if that means we can't shit talk it afterwards, that's fine. We can talk about good things too, because there are good things, there are good things, there are good things. And I'm not saying I will crawl back into the egg sack of this home once the credits are over. I guess I'm just saying I'm tired of answering the phone for every telemarketer that shares your area code, just because I can't forget the far too many times when that strange number didn't belong to a telemarketer, but to a friend whose number I no longer had saved, who was calling me to tell me that another friend whose number I no longer had saved had listened to whatever needles were telling them that they couldn't find their home here. And I guess what I'm saying is that now the little cave in my brain carved out for the people I miss, I will permanently miss, is expanding into gray matter. That was supposed to serve other purposes. And I guess what I'm saying is that I promise that paying to see the movie a 4th time is fine. I will pay for your ticket too, and it is not a burden. It is not a burden. You are not a burden. I will buy the popcorn. Okay. There we go. Okay. So this next one is also about Spider-Man. I tried to lump all my Spider-Man poems together. And it's kind of the same thing, same kind of deal. It's called Stan Lee came up with Spider-Man because he saw a fly land on a wall and decided there needed to be a superhero that could stick to walls. Which is true, by the way, that the genesis of that thing that is everywhere, Spider-Man's face is all just because Stan Lee thought hanging on a wall was cool, apparently. But Stan Lee came up with Spider-Man because he saw a fly land on a wall. So I am buying Elmer's glue in bulk and painting the side of Horseshoe Bluff that overlooks the Mississippi River. Layer after layer, the adhesive stench will blend with the sulfuric odor lifting off of the water. Stronger and stronger until I hallucinate Spidey crawling up towards the sky, shooting web balls at goblins above and rhinos below. High up my ass, I will pretend that web and spandex and super strengths and slabs of rock eating the space between good and bad are what we need to protect ourselves and protect each other from factory fog and Jameson bottles and health insurance premiums we might afford one day, and the slabs of rock between our mouths and ears. When the fumes have done enough to let me hold the hands of each and every friend buried by needles or Jameson bottles or their own leaky brains, and I'll sacrifice myself. I will throw myself at the limestone until the glue accepts my flesh, until I am the only set of astigmatic eyes waiting to capture the steam steadily rising off of the Mississippi and into Dubuque's throat. I will be ready. I will be ready. I will be ready to stop it, to stop something. I promise, just please don't choke before I can tear myself from this wall. And that one is actually a visual poem as well. If you are interested in seeing the rest of it, I think it's published in Indiana Review, January 2021 or something like that. But back to a piece of writing that you could buy right here today. I am going to be reading poems from this book again. So the next few poems, again, I think coming to this project and moving into, again, nature poetry, which is something that I've never really been, that was never my forte. I've always, I think, cherished my relationship with nature. As you might have picked up from the last couple of poems, I was born and raised in Dubuque, Iowa, about 100 miles east of here. And I spent a lot of time at like Mines of Spain there, if you're familiar, Horseshoe Bluff, Riverwalk, stuff like that. So that shows up in a lot of the poetry that I write. But this was shifting into something else. It was like landscape and place has always been really important to me, but that very specific landscape and place. Like I've always written a lot about my hometown, about Dubuque, but writing about a different place, I guess, was not something I've ever done. But making that shift, I really just kind of wanted to take time to kind of think about where I was kind of moving with my work and kind of how to define myself, which I don't love saying because I don't think that's necessary to strictly define yourself, but like thinking about the thing that I do, like that Tim Robinson sketch from I Think You Should Leave, or the big red thing, just you need to find something to do. Like I just did that to myself for a little bit. And I also turned 27, like right when I got the poem, which the whole 27 club thing was on my mind. So what do I do? Should I figure it out, or am I just going to die magically because of the 27 club? So anyway, this poem is called 27. I am older than I've ever been. I will never be as old as an oak. But I did not see 27 at 16, 17, 18, 19 through 22, beyond even. I'm not a Cobain, not a Hendrix. I have shakier fingers, an exploded pen. The wooden balcony beneath my feet is not ablaze. I am a frostbitten hand. In 80-degree heat, riverside humidity, I skip my cones and rods across the water. I borrow color from the sunbeams on the ripples. The fish sleep and borrow air they do not need. I steal time from the breeze, scrape bark to build an armored suit of the most permanent years I can grasp. A song is in my head that has never not existed to me. I can only outlast expectations. Everything is a splinter. We've got just a couple more here. So this next one, just kind of in the similar vein, just kind of that slow kind of observational poetry, but again, kind of finding where everything else kind of seeps into it is kind of where these next couple poems kind of come from. This one is called Powerlessness. I am small as the goslings across the lake, relatively speaking. I have a body that is capable of hurt. I want the goslings to stay small forever, but to never know what that means. A shrub floats on the water, and the hair on my arms wave white flags in the breeze. I have held the river in my arms, jeweled it with sunflowers, aware that they will sink. Dog barks in the distance, and the goslings scatter. They know of the smallness. They want to live. Somewhere there are bodies causing hurt. They are small, but do not know their smallness. Or they do, or wish not to. They have never held the river in their arms. Or they have, and mistook the lingering algae for a weapon, for a tarp, for something to control how the light may bounce off of the waves. Then just have two more I want to read here. So, as I mentioned, most of my work before this was very heavily rooted in pop culture, and a lot of that is in here. I would say this book is just kind of pop culture and nature, purposefully, not just thrown together, but like kind of put together, kind of examining the different kind of relationships I have in my life with not necessarily people, and that too, but with like things, I guess, in my life, and kind of examining what is still sacred to me and what isn't. I feel like I have spent a lot of my life defining myself more on like what I don't like or don't want to do, or all of that, kind of defining myself in negative space instead of the positive space. And I think this poem is kind of an attempt to correct that. And it's also the band Slipknot. So this is called Letters to a Young Maggot, Listening to Slipknot in the Woods. If you don't know, band Slipknot, Iowan heroes, they lovingly refer to their fans as maggots. I mean, I can't explain it away. It is what it is. But I listened to a lot of Slipknot as a teen. I was a very cool teenager, as evidenced by my love of nu metal in 2010. But anyway, and here I am making fun of that 16-year-old. This is a poem about trying to make fun of that 16-year-old a little bit less. It's, again, called Listening to Slipknot in the Woods. Because I've learned to wander to the blast beat rhythm of the heretic anthem, to sniff daisies in the midst of down-tuned distortion, I bend towards past the wildflowers and scrape a dirt nest in the earth for a 16-year-old me that will say to them, you do not need your rage, but you can hang it on a spiderwort stem, wait, bleed, grab, grab it. Protect yourself if you must. It is your right to have it. You do not need to sleep in the arms of shattered trees anymore. I promise I am still picking out each splinter left behind. Your job is done. My throat is all petals and pollens. I will still scream along with you with 8. The blood in our shared esophagus will continue to boil. I promise it is not your fault that it must. I push my fingers into the edge of my sockets. I paint my Brando eyes black and mail them to California to you. Please have them. Please keep them safe. I will think of you. Do not need to be, I will think of you. You do not need to be tired anymore. I am so tired of disappearing leaves, of flood, of foreclosure. Your friends have died. I am sorry. I am trying to breathe in sulfur and exhale lavender fields. I am trying to spit out the poison oak on my tongue. I am trying to tape the tattered and torn prairie grass back together while tornadoes dance on park benches. I am so tired of wind, of wings, of gravestones floating on the water. Why do they want us dead? If I lose, I promise it is not your fault. It is not your battle anymore. Let me be your pulse. Let you be my heart murmur. I am surfacing. Please, please rest now. One last one real quick. And it's a Beavis and Butthead. It's called Cornholio Forever. My TV is a field of echinacea, ablaze, pyromaniacs running free. The prairie before me is a window, is a cracked screen, a disruption of the static. My spine is rotted fish skeletons stitched together. I am scared, but I will sit on the couch in a Metallica tee and throw up the horns. I am at peace. I am young when buried under bluebells. I am young when Beavis sings, breaking the law, breaking the law. I felt less young than I should have when I was young, but in new worlds, in crude pencil marks and cottonwood trunks, I find missing years. I am Butthead in a sundress throwing daisies. I wear the petals of bygone selves in a crown around my head so I can hold them to my chest when I need to. I am a body growing wildflowers. I am Cornholio forever. Thank you.
We've got a little bit of time. If anyone has any questions for Seth, if you're on Zoom, would like to put them in the chat, feel free to do that as well. Well, I'm going to start with one because I know everyone's thinking. Okay. So, you talked a little bit about this in the interview, but could you talk a little bit of how you decided that you were going to be not just writing poetry during this residency you did, but also doing prints and then putting together the chapel? Yeah.
So first of all, you mentioned the interview. I want to first thank Hannah who conducted that interview with me. That's live on the Final Thursday website. If anyone would like to read it, again, very appreciative of Jim for hosting that online and for Hannah again conducting that interview. But yeah, can you repeat the question? I forgot it when I was doing that.
I mean, you did the printing part of it, and how it fit in. You didn't, that isn't naturally what you would expect by writing nature.
Yes. So for me, it was the writing comes first to me, comes more naturally to me. Didn't talk about this as much in the reading itself, but yes, as part of the visiting art program at Hartman, I also part of the funding was for the writing of this book, but in addition to that, I was learning how to do linocut printmaking, which is something I've always had some interest in. It literally started in like middle school. I did it for an art class and then like enjoyed it and forgot about it for another decade. And then some of my friends were doing it and I was like, oh, that seems cool. And then I didn't do anything. And then 5 years later, I was like, well, I need to like write a book and I guess it has to like look like something. So I think for me, I knew that what I wanted to get out of that not assistantship, I guess, visiting artistship, I guess. What I wanted to get out of that was a chat book like this. I wanted to get 20 to 30 poems in some kind of book. And I think, truly, I think it was just like I had $20 and was bored one day, and I remembered that I kind of liked doing the note cut when I did it. And then I was like, well, hey, this is a really cool way to make a book. I was interested in letterpress at first, but it was too confusing to me. Linocut is much more simple. But yeah, that was kind of where that came from. But I think it spoke to me more because it is just this very hands-on thing. Like everything you see with the Linocut is, it is somebody's hand movement. I guess it's the ghost of my hand. I don't know. So I like how tangible it is, and I like Linocut, it's a little slab of linoleum. You carve a picture in it, slam the picture down on a piece of paper. So I don't know. I just think I've always gravitated towards really like hands-on things like that. And I think it's probably just like ADHD brain wanting to like focus on something. If my hands are full, I'm focused on the thing my hands are full with. If I'm doing like digital illustration, there is like Discord on that computer and stuff like that I could, or like Tetris. Yeah, good. Thank you for the question.
And then there was a question from the Zoom. Rachel is asking, she loves how you describe nature influencing your work. Were you surprised by this? And then any tips on walking out in the woods and finding inspiration?
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. I would say it definitely surprised me a little bit because again, like as much as I've always had like some kind of relationship with nature, and particularly with the nature and landscape of kind of my hometown and stuff like that, but it wasn't a super central part of my writing specifically. So I think I was I was surprised how getting the amount of kind of disconnected I was able to be by, going and kind of just walking out to the woods for a bit. I think I was mostly surprised by just kind of how naturally it came. This feels self-aggrandizing in a weird way. Like, I was so good that actually I tried writing nature poetry. I was really good at it. Buy my book. But no, I think I was more worried about because nature poetry was never, again, part of my forte. So I was mostly concerned about kind of, would I be able to write? Like, would I do anything with it? And thankfully I was able to kind of find inspiration. I think in terms of like advice for kind of going to the woods and just trying to write, I think just find somewhere quiet and know what you like. Like I am very much a water person. I was an extra in Avatar: The Way of Water. Just kidding, I haven't even seen it yet. Say good. But anyway, I enjoy water and rivers and stuff like that. So like I found a nice place by the Cedar River most days, or by I can't remember the name of the lake, but there's a lake at Hearst Reserve to sit by. So really just like being honest with yourself about what you write, and also just being honest with yourself on like if you want to go write in the woods. Because I feel like there were times in my life where I like kind of tried to go that route, like for not in a long time, but probably like in high school. And I think at that point in my life, that just like wasn't the kind of thing I wanted to do. So I think with anything, especially when it comes to finding motivation for doing anything, whether it's writing in the woods or whatever it is, just being honest with yourself about how much you want to do it, and realize like there's no romantic ideal that you like have to be ascribing to. Some days I wouldn't write a whole lot. Sometimes I would sit and write like 6 poems. So I think that became really important to me. That kind of, I think this book in a lot of ways is kind of an attempt to be kinder to myself. I think through the writing of it was something I focused on a lot. And I think that's part of it, just being honest about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And remember a pen or pencil or something, because I didn't do that. So that's where it was, yes. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm glad you mentioned your thesis week, by the way, with the 2020 outstanding read a thesis.
That's right.
That's right. But you mentioned how it's a hybrid that you wrote nonfiction. I think it's pretty good. It's nonfiction, fiction, and then also poetry.
Yes.
So it's sort of mix of all of them. And I'm wondering, first, if you were able to write a prose one.
Okay.
And if not, maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but then at the very least, I know some people in the room are working on a very similar project. They're switching.
Oh, yeah.
They're switching genres. So maybe you can talk about how you approach or how you feel differently when you're writing and music.
Yeah. So it is definitely, it was a weird couple of years kind of trying to figure out like what that should or would look like. And thank you to Jim and Jeremy, two people in here who served. I know Grant, who wanted to be here tonight but couldn't make it. It was Grant Tracy, I'm sure all of you know, very, very nice Canadian man. All three of them were on my thesis committee. So again, just thank you for that. But I think to me, it's just kind of sticking with, I hesitate to say the big picture because I think thinking of things in terms of like the big picture, I think can be very overwhelming. Like I very much, when I was writing my thesis, was kind of going one step at a time. But when I was taking those steps, I think I was very focused on what the end goal was though. So for me in particular, I had my thesis was, again, it was a mix of different genres. But at its core, what it was about was essentially, again, assessing my relationship with kind of superhero culture, but also with my hometown of Dubuque and kind of how those two things are tied together. So we're catching a theme in my writing. It's just cramming two things together and trying to figure out where they're similar. But I think every time I didn't go into it thinking, I don't remember how exactly compositionally that ended up, but like I didn't go into it thinking, you know, there's gonna be 30 pages of fiction, there's gonna be 60 pages of poetry and 60 pages of whichever genre I didn't already say. Also, it's a very long thesis, but I think I wanted to, I think you need to find what the central question to your project is. And for this book, I think the central question was, how do I kind of move forward in the world as a complete person? I think is really what is the central question here, regardless of all the nature stuff, all the pop culture stuff, all of the Slipknot stuff. The central question was, hey, I'm out of these 2 years of pandemic and I basically became a person last year because I turned 25 in the pandemic, I think, or whatever, and then that hit and I was like gone. I felt like, and I'm sure everybody here has a kind of a similar thing, kind of felt like you were entering the world again. So I was just kind of in this weird space and I kind of wanted to define, well, like, who am I, I guess. And that central question is really like how I came to all of these things, how I came to all of these poems. In one way or another, these poems are asking some sort of question about where the person I want to be next, I guess. And in terms of my thesis, what that question was basically, well, how did being really too into superheroes and stuff growing up affect my experience of my upbringing? As long as every single thing I'm writing is working towards that kind of central question or that central thesis, I guess you're doing something right and you can kind of shape it afterwards. I very much just wrote a lot of stuff. Like I think the initial draft of my thesis was like 250 pages or something, and I just pared it down to 90 or whatever. Because I think for me, it's much easier to kind of see the shape of a work once everything is thrown at the page. So yeah, I would just say kind of find what it is exactly that you want this work to do for you. What do you want to get out of it? And is everything you write moving towards that goal?
Any other questions? All right, well then, thank you, Seth, for
Thank you to everyone who showed up on Zoom. Make sure to check out Seth's book before you leave.
Thank you to all the Zoom viewers. Sorry, I didn't call you out earlier. Thank you.